大家好，我是塔哥，欢迎来到塔哥密谈录。今天我们要访谈 UFO 领域一位著名的大佬，英国版 X-Men， 英国国防部 Ufo 调查员尼克·波普。尼克·波普是英国著名的 UFO 调查员，他曾在英国国防部任职21年。说到英国的 UFO 事件，大家最熟悉的莫过于发生在1980年12月的蓝道申森林事件。Woodbridge 空军基地的多位军人目击到一个灼热而又发出耀眼白光的三角形 UFO 降落在了森林里面，随后分解成5个白色的物体，之后消失在了夜空之中。英国国防部经过侦查发现 UFO 降落地点的辐射水平似乎远高于背景平均值，这个事件也被称之为英国版的罗斯维尔事件。还有1993年3月30日与31日的科斯福德事件，这2天里都有人目击到巨大的 UFO， 包括百姓和军人均有目击。 UFO 为巨大的三角形飞行物，在空军基地上空缓慢地飞行，并且发出低频率的分鸣声，最终突然加速飞离，其飞行速度远远超过军用喷气式飞机。还有无数的 UFO 目击报告以及第3类接触事件，尼克·波普均参与了相关调查。当有新的目击报告出现时，他就会快速开展调查工作，包括与目击者交谈、检查雷达与磁带、分析照片和视频等等等等。可以说，他就是现实中英国版 X 档案的男主角。他掌握了大量的目击报告与 UFO 事件的原始证据。尼克·波普的调查事迹也经常被国内外主流媒体争相报道，包括新华网、BBC 等等等等。他同样也是 UFO 揭秘类电影节目的常客，中国观众非常熟悉的远古外星人系列，以及2013年华盛顿 UFO 揭秘公民听证会等等等等。面对这么重要的历史人物，塔哥当然要去亲自探索一番。于是尼克·波普接受了塔哥的邀请，做了一次线上视频专访。这个专访应该算得上是尼克·波普的中国首次专访。那么就让我们来听听这位英国的 X-Man 有什么精彩的爆料吧。特别感谢崔女士现场的翻译工作，3连你懂，来吧，上干货。
Thank you. It is very nice to be on the show. I investigated UFOs for the British government for many years, but now I live in the United States. So hopefully I can give an interesting perspective on this subject.
好的，第一个问题，尼克先生，我们都知道您在英国国防部专门调查不明飞行物的部门呢，工作了长达20多年。您呢，就相当于是英国版 X 档案的 X-Man， 这非常的酷啊！请问呢，在您众多的调查事件当中，是否有遇到过哪些真实的 UFO 与外星人事件？我们希望呢，您能分享一下您的这些经历，谢谢。
Certainly. When I was doing this job in the 1990s, we had a very interesting case where over a period of 6 hours, there were multiple UFO sightings involving the public, the police, and the military. And we had multiple reports of huge triangular-shaped object moving very slowly and then accelerating away at high speed, witnessed very close to 2 military bases. We launched a full investigation and no conventional explanation was ever found. So this was typical of the most interesting sort of cases in our government files. One of the most interesting parts of this case was a military witness who said that this object was the size of a jumbo jet, and that a narrow beam of light fired down from this craft to the ground, and that also there was a low frequency humming sound coming from the craft, which was very unpleasant in a way. It was one of these sounds that could be felt reverberating through his body, as well as being heard in the audio spectrum. We launched a full investigation, of course, and in most cases with UFOs, we were able to find a conventional explanation, misidentifications of ordinary objects and phenomena like aircraft or satellites or meteors. But this case was completely unexplained, and there were very few possibilities. Either this was some secret prototype aircraft or drone, or it was a complete mystery. And we were never able to come to a definitive conclusion in this case. Also, this showed that even though we did not claim to have solved the UFO mystery, either with this case or with any of the several hundred cases that we investigated each year, our conclusion was that this phenomenon raised serious defense and national security issues, whatever we were dealing with, and particularly because these cases showed speeds and maneuvers and accelerations that seemed to exceed even the cutting edge of our own military technology.
OK， 那这个他说的这件事件是否指的是1993年的科斯福德事件？
This is indeed the case referred to as the Cosford incident from March 1993, yes. And it was very interesting because we had several dozen different witnesses, and also because the UFO sightings took place over a series of about 6 hours. So even though there were some possible conventional explanations for some of the sightings, such as the decay in the atmosphere of a Russian rocket, this could not explain the many, many sightings over several different hours. This is a fascinating case, and the Ministry of Defense has declassified and released the file that I wrote, which runs to several hundred pages of documents.
OK， 那么这个科斯福德事件的这个 UFO， 它是否已经展示出了我们非地球科技的某一些机动性吗？您可以说一下吗？
Yes, this case, this UFO showed some very unusual characteristics. And one thing in particular, which was very striking, was the ability of this craft to accelerate from a very slow speed to a very high Mach speed, several thousands of miles an hour, with no sonic boom. And this is something which has been recently commented on by Luis Elizondo, who also ran a UFO program, but in the United States. And he has experienced the same thing in the United States government reports that he has investigated.
OK， 是您提到的这个Elizondo他爆料的这些 UFO 的视频，这个是我们后面会有相关的提问。那么我接着上一个问题，下一个问题是呢，英国最著名的这个 UFO 事件应该就是1980年的蓝道申森林事件据说呢有高科技的外星飞船降落在了森林里面，并且也留下了很多的证据。请问这个事件具体的情况，您可以跟我们说一下吗？谢谢。
Certainly, this is the most famous and best evidenced case in the British government's UFO files. It took place before I joined the Ministry of Defense, but I undertook a cold case review of this some years afterwards. And this involved 3 nights of activity in December 1980 next to 2 military bases operated by the United States Air Force, Bentwaters and Woodbridge, and Rendlesham Forest lies between them. And on the first night, yes, something landed in the forest. At first, the military personnel thought that an aircraft had crashed. But when they went to investigate, they found instead a small triangular-shaped metallic craft that had landed in the forest. And it stayed there for several minutes before taking off again vertically, rising up above the trees and accelerating away to the horizon at incredible speed. And afterwards, they examined the ground and they found burn marks on the trees and evidence that this object had weighed several tons. And most interestingly of all, they found levels of radiation assessed by government scientists as being significantly higher than the average background radiation in that area. The UFO returned briefly on the second night, and then on the third night, it came back again, and this time, the deputy base commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, decided to go into the forest to investigate himself, to try to dismiss this story, which he felt was interfering with the operation of the military activities. But he went out into the forest and he became a witness himself. And at one point, the UFO fired a beam of light in front of him and his men. And later, he asked himself, is this a weapon? Is this a warning? Is this communication? What is it? He did not know, but he concluded whatever the object was, it was unexplained and under intelligent control. The British government and the United States government launched a full investigation, but no explanation was found. And even though these events are now 40 years in the past, the incident remains unexplained.
OK， 那么当时的这些目击人员就只是看到了飞行器，并没有看到操控飞行器的人是谁，对吗？
That's correct. None of the witnesses, none of the reliable witnesses saw anything other than an object of some sort. So we do not know who or what was operating it. And to this day, investigations continue, but unless a new witness comes forward or unless a new government document is suddenly revealed, perhaps we will never know what happened in that forest.
OK， 那么我们进入下一个问题。在今年的6月25日，美国国防部发布了关于UFO UAP 的报告。虽然呢没有正面承认这就是外星人的飞行器，但是呢又侧面的向大众证实了确实有超越人类科技的飞行器存在。那么尼克先生，请问美国国防部发布 UAP 报告的这个行为，还有法国政府好像也是公布了这个 UAP 的报告，那么他们的目的是什么？背后又是有什么样的势力在指导他们去公开这些报告？这是正式公开 UFO 外星人存在前的铺垫工作吗？谢谢。
For many years, we have had reports of military pilots seeing UFOs and military radar operators tracking these objects. But up until recently, these were really just rumors and unsubstantiated stories. But in the last 3 years in the United States, some of these pilots have come forward and gone on the record with their testimony, and also the radar operators, and also some of the intelligence community personnel who have investigated this. And as a result, the United States Congress demanded a report from the United States intelligence community, and particularly military intelligence. And this is what we have just received. Some important points about this report. Firstly, it is only a preliminary assessment, so there are further reports that will be coming shortly. Secondly, what we have seen has only been an unclassified summary. There is a longer, more classified report that the Intelligence Committee and the Armed Services Committee has received, as well as classified briefings. Thirdly, the report, even the unclassified version, contains some interesting information saying that UAP pose a potential national security challenge to the United States government and a definite air safety threat. And more work is needed to clarify the true nature of the phenomenon.
那么上一个问题我需要补充一下，这份美国国防部发布的 UAP 报告，百姓所能够看到的公开部分，其实只有短短几页。那么听说顶级机密的部分呢，长达数百页，其中呢还有图片、视频等影像资料，内容呢堪比科幻片一样精彩。请问您能说说这份报告的 Top Secret 的部分吗？
The report that has been released to the public is 9 pages long. There is a classified version of the report that is 18 pages long. So it is double in length. But there are many, many more pages of other documents related to this that do not form part of the report, but are about UAP. These include some more photographs and videos taken by the United States Navy, and also some parts of highly classified briefings at top secret level, which have probably been given to the president and to various different senators.
下一个问题，据说有许多的飞碟呢坠毁在了美国，并且呢也被美国回收到了类似于51区、像 S4 外星基地等地方进行了逆向工程的研究。请问尼克先生，您了解这些吗？是否英国和其他国家也有逆向工程的研究？我想知道的是，是否人类已经具备了仿造出飞碟的技术能力？你能说说吗？谢谢。
I am aware of many stories and rumors about UFO crashes, but I have never seen anything when I was working in government that would prove that these stories are true. I have heard, of course, the stories that wreckage from something that allegedly crashed in Roswell in 1947 was recovered and then developed at Area 51. But if this is true, if the United States government has this information, I am sad to say that they did not share it with the British government. So as far as I am aware, these are fascinating stories, but I cannot validate them.
OK， 那么接着上一个问题，美国国防部五角大楼的前顾问蒂莫西·古德在接受英国 BBC 专访时透露，美国前总统艾森豪威尔曾经呢3次和外星人商讨和签署了一些协定。那么蒂莫西·古德说，第一次呢是在1954年的2月20日，艾森豪威尔在爱德华空军基地会见了2个白皮肤、蓝眼睛、金头发的北欧型外星人，据说呢是金星人啊。外星人呢提出用绿色能源与科技来换取销毁核武器的条件，但是呢没有达成合作。另外呢2次去建了一种叫小灰人的种族，这些外星人呢提出了先进的武器及技术的协议来换取绑架动物与部分人类的许可。最终呢，艾森豪威尔和他们达成了合作协议。我想问尼克先生，你怎么看待蒂莫西·古德他给 BBC 专访时所爆料的这些内容？这是否是真实的？并且您是否还有更多关于这个事件的一些细节呢？
I know Timothy Good quite well, and we are friends. But as far as I am aware, again, this is just a story, and I have seen nothing that I saw at the Ministry of Defense to convince me that these stories are true. Now, there is some evidence that before he was president, while he was still in the military, General Eisenhower met Winston Churchill during the Second World War and discussed the question of UFOs because of some sightings that pilots were experiencing. But as for these other stories about Edwards Air Force Base and meetings with aliens, I do not have any information about that. I have never seen anything in government files that would confirm this was true.
OK， 那么尼克先生，您确实是一个非常严谨的人，是讲一些证据来这个佐证这些事件的人。那么也可以说，是否您也并没有就是听说，就是其实各个国家政府也确实和外星人有一些接触的这样一些情况呢？
Yes, you are correct. When I evaluate evidence, I try to be very careful. This is always the way that I handled the question when I worked at the Ministry of Defense. And I always try to differentiate between information that I know and opinions that I have. But I am not aware of any similar stories that can be proven by evidence. I concentrate on stories from pilots. I concentrate on cases where UFOs are tracked on radar. I concentrate on stories where UFOs are filmed from military aircraft. As for the other stories, they are interesting, but I cannot say whether or not they are true.
OK， 那么在美国的一个空军基地里面，有一些美国军官呢，他声称就是经常有这些 UFO 光临一些核导弹的基地上空，然后当这些 UFO 光临这个基地上空的时候，经常会发生这个核弹头的设备瘫痪、失灵的一些情况。那么像这些军官所说，可能 UFO 对地球的核武安全是非常非常的关注，他们甚至是有能力能够阻止核战争的爆发。 那么，正如您之前所说的，像美国公开 UAP 报告这些背后所反映出了 UFO 对无论是英国也好，美国也好的这个空域的国防安全造成了一些威胁。但是我认为呢，UFO 它所表现出的这种高科技，远远超出了我们地球人所掌握的科技。如果它真的是对人类是一种威胁的话，那我们地球应该早就已经被他们入侵，或者早就已经毁于他们的科技之下了。但是很显然，他们并没有这么做。您对此有什么样的一个看法吗？
I am certainly aware of several cases where UFOs have been seen over nuclear bases and nuclear missile silos, installations where nuclear material is processed. And of course, this is interesting. And the report to Congress, even though it did not discuss nuclear issues, it certainly highlighted the fact that many of the most interesting UFO reports take place close to military bases, which is again one reason why this is regarded as of defense interest. Let me say, though, that in relation to the question of a threat, just because there has been no hostility does not mean that we can say there is no threat. So, for example, during the Cold War, we regarded the Soviet Union as being a threat, but we did not say at any time, okay, 20 years has passed and there has been no attack, so there is no threat. We said, yes, there is still a threat because the technology is equal to us, and we do not know their intentions. So with UFOs, we can say that the capability is impressive, but we do not know the intention. So we cannot say whether there is a threat. And it is better, this is how the military think, it is better to assume there is a threat and be relieved if one does not arise, than to assume everything will be fine and then suddenly be caught out if a threat emerges. We can make very few assumptions about extraterrestrial life, but it is a good assumption that if we are being visited by extraterrestrials, the technology that they have to be able to travel between the stars is many, many times more advanced than our technology.
所以说，在您这么长的调查的生涯当中，大部分都只是在目击到就 UFO 本身，而不是和 UFO 里面的外星生物或者某一种生物，进行接触的这些案例。就是您是否有接触到一些就关于谁在驾驶这些生物的一些接触案例？
Most of my government work related to UFO sightings, but of course, we did receive reports from some people who claimed to have encountered extraterrestrial entities. We listened to their stories, but there was no evidence, no radar evidence, no photographs, no videos. So until somebody brings us an artifact, it is very difficult to, but yes, we speculated, and I would love these stories to be true, because I think the world would be a much more interesting place with extraterrestrial visitation than if all this just turns out to be terrestrial technology. So I I hope this is true.
OK，那么最近我们收到了一条消息，就是90多岁高龄的前加拿大国防部长保罗·赫勒他去世了。他呢是作为一个身份最高的一个揭秘人士，去揭示 UFO 和外星人的存在，并且早已到访过地球，甚至有超过80种外星种族跟我们有进行过接触。那么除了他以外，有非常非常多的服务于政府或者一些军方的一些揭秘人士出来公开的现身，去揭露一些关于外星人的秘密，关于政府与外星人接触的一些秘密，关于 UFO 的秘密。似乎他们背后已经形成了一个非常大的一个运动，被称之为 disclosure，被称之为大揭露运动。他们想要去推动主流媒体或者政府去正式的公开外星人存在的秘密，以及去逼迫政府释放被掩盖的高科技。在2013年的时候，就像华盛顿就有举办过一个全民的这个揭秘听证会，当时有6位国会议员，有超过几十位、上百位的这样一些证词的揭秘人士去进行这方面的演讲。那么您认为这个大揭露这个运动，包括这些揭秘人士他们所说的内容或者他们的目的是什么？您是怎么去看待的？
There are certainly many, many people, including people with government, military, and intelligence community backgrounds who believe in extraterrestrial visitation and want to see information about this disclosed. I knew Paul Hellyer fairly well. We met several times. He was a truthful and sincere man. He admitted freely the information he had about UFOs did not come to him through direct government experience, but was told to him by third parties. So again, of course, there are debates about this information, but yes, he is one of many people who was part of a movement for more openness about this from government. But governments can only disclose information that they know. So if the answer is that this phenomenon is real, but even the governments do not have all the answers, then it is very difficult to disclose what you do not know. So my position is that many governments want to find out more information about UFOs, but these governments do not necessarily have a big secret that they are keeping from the public. It is a mystery, I think, even to governments, to the United States, the United Kingdom, China, Russia, France, Australia, Canada, to everyone, perhaps.
也就是说，您是偏向于认为，就是政府其实也并没有和外星人有一些接触，这大部分的揭露性的内容都只是一个故事，是吗？
That's correct, yes. With some of the military encounters with UFOs, we have some good evidence. We have, for example, the films of the US Navy jets chasing UFOs. But with many of these other cases, we really just have stories, and often not even first-hand stories, but second-hand or third-hand stories. So I think as an investigator, I always try to be careful, and I never claim that something is true unless I can prove it.
那么如果有一天主流媒体它开始公开的去讨论外星人是存在的，并且也造访过地球，那么您认为会对我们所有人的生活有什么样的影响吗？如果是这样的话，它是积极的吗？我们又该做什么样的准备工作呢？如果有一天我们需要去接受这些外星人是友好的，并且他们要跟我们进行接触，您认为这对我们会有什么样的影响？
Discovering the existence of extraterrestrial life, whether it's a revelation from government or whether it's open contact, some sort of event, a landing. This would be the biggest story, I think, in human history. And it would affect every part of our lives: politics, religion, science, technology, the economy, the military, everything. On the other hand, people would still have to go to work. People would still have to pay the bills and buy groceries and send the children to school. So on the one hand, everything changes. But on the other hand, everything stays the same. But okay. My apologies. There are many variables. So, for example, what if we had extraterrestrials like Steven Spielberg, E.T.? But what if we had an alien invasion like Independence Day? So it depends. There are many different scenarios. In some scenarios, we would react with wonder and with joy. And in other scenarios, we would react with fear and panic. It depends how these events would unfold.
对，所以我个人觉得这个外星人存在，并且和我们公开接触是非常非常重要的，可能是全人类历史上最重要的一个事件，并且对我们会有非常大的一个影响。那么您个人认为，在我们有生之年是否这一天会到来呢？它是否有一个时间点呢？
I hope it will happen soon. I think that our scientific advances in terms of our telescopes, for example, to see further out into the universe, to listen for radio signals from other civilizations. I think we are approaching the point where if there are other civilizations out there, we will have the technology to detect them. So I suspect that if they exist, we will find out within our lifetime.
太好了，我们非常期待。那么今天的我们的专访就到这里进入尾声了，感谢尊敬的尼克先生以及我们今天的翻译艾米。您是一个勇士，时刻呢在 UFO 调查的第一线，为真相而奋斗着。我非常荣幸可以和您进行交流。我希望未来您能给中国的观众带来更多珍贵的信息。那么今天的专访就到这里，感谢您。
Thank you very much. It has been a great pleasure to talk to you about this fascinating subject, and I hope that everybody who watches and listens to this will be interested because it is a very interesting and important question. So thank you for the fascinating conversation. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice weekend.
Bye. Thank you.